happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a reaction to AC/DC, their album Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us anyway, check out that Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. We're running a free Patreon trial. Go check it out. We super appreciate the patrons. All right, we're going through all the Bon Scott albums. We did High Voltage last month. Go check that out after this. All this courtesy of Carl. Got a little bit of facts here on this album, and then we'll jump into it. It's the third studio album, although the second international release. A lot of people, it's their second album because High Voltage was a combination of two albums, but I won't get into all that. We'll go watch that review. This is the third studio album, originally released only in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand in 1976. The album was not released in the U.S. until 1981, more than 1 year after lead singer Bon Scott's death. This was also AC/DC's first album in its entirety to be recorded with the same lineup, rather than including at least one track recorded with a different bassist or drummer. Went to 5 in Australia, 3 in the US when it was eventually released, 6-time platinum in both Australia and US, becoming the third highest selling album by AC/DC in the US, behind Highway to Hell, which just barely beat it with 7, and then Back in Black was 25 times platinum. That's a whole nother story. They were again recording this album in December of 75 at Albert Studios with Harry Vonda and George Young, yes, the elder brother of Malcolm and Angus, producing. In April 76, they went on their first tour of the UK, where It's a Long Way to the Top, If You Want to Rock and Roll, was released as a single. High Voltage was released in the US in 76. However, hampered by visa problems and a lack of interest from Atlantic Records, the record label in the US, the band returned to Australia to finish this album. The term Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap is an homage to the cartoon Beanie and Cecil, which Angus watched when he was a child. One of the cartoon characters was named Dishonest John and carried a business card that read, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, special rates for Sundays and holidays. On the Live on Donington DVD, Malcolm and Angus explained that the concept of the album was to base it as a Bulgarian mystery scenario. International release, so let's talk about that because that's what we're going to listen to, and that's what everybody has, right? A modified international edition, so this gets even a little more complicated, was released on Atlantic on December 17, 1976. Australia was September of 76, although the label wasn't happy with its vocal and production. According to bassist Mark Evans, band manager Michael Browning told him he assumed Bon Scott would be fired as a result. The band even teetered on the brink of being dropped. The Atlantic A&R department in the U.S. said, "We're sorry, but this album actually doesn't make it," recalled Phil Carson, who had signed the band. "We're not going to put it out, and we're dropping the band." So I went to Atlantic executive Nishui Erdogan, right, very famous, and showed him the sales figures that we got for High Voltage. They were not awe-inspiring, but considering we'd only pay $25,000 for the album, this was not so bad. He backed me up, and I re-signed the band at that point. I managed to claw it back in, thank God. They hadn't even toured the U.S., and at the time, there was no way something as raw and gritty as Dirty Deeds was going to make it onto American radio playlists by itself. It was a brutally simple catch-22. Americans were said to have trouble understanding Bon, and if the people working with the band couldn't make out the lyrics, how was his voice going to work on the all-important U.S. radio networks? Following the American success of Highway to Hell in '79, copies of the album began to appear as imports in the U.S. That used to be a big thing, boys and girls, back in the day. Couldn't get something, can we get the import? It's a great thing. Obviously that'll never happen again now, but with streaming. But some of these were the original Australian edition on Albert Productions. However, Atlantic also pressed the international version in Australia, and many of these were also exported to the U.S. Strong demand for both versions in the wake of even the greater success, obviously, with Back in Black, one of their greatest selling albums of all time, led the U.S. division of Atlantic to finally authorize an official U.S. release in March of '81. It went straight to number 3 on the Billboard album charts. However, the release was also poorly timed, considering that AC/DC had just successfully reinvented itself with a new singer, Brian Johnson. The band was working on a new album, which would ultimately become For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, released later that same year. The U.S. release of Dirty Deeds was widely seen as damaging the momentum for that album, which it outsold. The band was forced to add songs from Dirty Deeds to a set list on a subsequent tour, also taking the focus away from their new album. You know what? Record companies are going to get that money, man. They don't care. The international release had significant variations from the original album. Jailbreak, which had preceded the LP's release in Australia and the UK, and R.I.P., Rock in Peace, were jettisoned in favor of Rocker from the 1975 Australian album TNT and Love at First Feel. Jailbreak did not see a release in the US, Canada, and Japan until October of '84 as part of the international '74 release Jailbreak EP. So, yeah, it's all complicated. Don't worry about it. We're going to jump into this album. All tracks are written by Angus, Malcolm, and Bon Scott. Something I didn't mention in the first review, and Carl, our patron, pointed out, I should have, is that there's a big age difference here, right? Bon was 7 to 9 years older than Malcolm and Angus. Angus was the youngest, so he's 7 years older than Malcolm, 9 years older than Angus, give or take a little bit there. So he was a lot older, even though Malcolm and Angus were basically driving the band. Bon was writing the songs for the most part. All right, the music won't be in the video, but it will be the Vimeo link below, so I invite you to click on that and follow along. Let's kick this thing off. The album opener, the title track, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Lead single, ranked number 24 on VH1's 40 Greatest Metal Songs, and in 2009 it was named the 31st Best Hard Rock Song of All Time, also by VH1. Australia went to 29, UK 37. Eventually in the US on the mainstream rock charts went to 4. Features a backing vocal consisting of a heavy breathing sound made on the downbeat during verses. It also features a title in a spoken word style at the end of the chorus, plus a scream at the end of the song. Just tell you what it's about now instead of later, right? The song's narrator, a hitman, invites people experiencing problems to either call his phone number or visit him at his home, at which point he will perform assorted, unsavory, and violent acts to resolve said problems. Situations in which he offers assistance, including those involving lewd high school headmasters and significant others who are either adulterous or persistently find fault with their partners. As detailed by the song, the dirty deeds performed at low cost were all kinds of things. This became a little bit famous, this song. It's kind of the start of the lawsuits, right? In 1981, Norman and Marilyn White of Libertyville, Illinois, filed a $250,000 lawsuit in Illinois Circuit Court against Atlantic Records and its distributors because they allege their telephone number was included in the song, resulting in hundreds of prank phone calls. Their attorney told Chicago Tribune that the song's 36, 24, 36 digits were followed by a hey, which to his client sounded like an 8, thus creating the couple's phone number. I mean, that's unique and insane. I get you're frustrated. Change your phone number. Come on, man. All right, all the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Carl. All right, I actually knew this song. I just didn't know that I knew this song. The song that Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Malcolm and Angus coming in on the backing vocals are really nice. The things he can do for you when he talks in that bridge: concrete shoes, cyanide, TNT, neckties, contracts, and high voltage. We'll throw back to the previous album, but really well done. So, I mean, this is AC/DC at its finest, right? The guitar work is fantastic. Bon sounds great. Just kind of the almost yelling but under control. It's anthemic, right? Well, that one's going to be tough to follow, but we got to move on with the album. We got Love at First Feel. It's not included on the album's original Australian edition, released in September of '76, making it one of only 2 tracks from international AC/DC albums not available on the band's Australian albums. The other is Cold Hearted Man, released on European pressings of Powerage, but that's going to be a little while down the line for us. However, it was released in Australia as a single in January of '77, going to number 63. All right, Love at First Feel. Angus's guitar solo in there is fantastic, very anthemic on it. Look, the lyrics are absolute trash. I'm just going to tell it like it is, right? He's talking about hooking up with an underage girl. Hey, I've got a teenage daughter, man. These things hit you a little different, right? This was the 70s. This is what dudes did. He's, no one thought really much of it. It's just rockers doing their thing, but, channeling his inner Jimmy Page. So in one way, the song is really good, but the lyrics are absolute trash. So that's where I am on that one. Speaking of lyrics being absolute trash, they might not be on here, but sometimes this is just like easy pickings, right? I know it's one of their most infamous songs. We got Big Balls. All right, Big Balls. I mean, he disguises it as they're going to a ballroom, right? And ballroom parties and stuff. But I don't know, man. I know many of you that are AC/DC diehards probably love this. I know there's shirts that say AC/DC, I got big balls. Like, this is not for me, man. This is way too juvenile. You Shook Me All Night Long? Yeah, that's not, we can, you know what that's about, right? If you don't know, like, go read the lyrics. But that's cleverly kind of disguised. We can disguise these things a little bit, right? But this is just like, yeah, I mean, not for me, but I know some of you love it. I'm not condemning it. Just, I'm always honest, right? Not for me. Next up, we got Rocker. All right, Rocker. Just a fantastic song, right? Channeling their 1950s Chuck Berry and James Brown and early rock and roll, just tremendously done. The guitar work obviously is always great. It's going to be a broken record, so to speak, on here. I still always got to point it out. But I thought Bon did a good job enunciating everybody. Like, you could understand him. I don't know. Some songs it's harder, but most songs you can understand. I don't know what Atlantic in the U.S. was talking about. And the drumming on it, I haven't talked about it, but the first 4 tracks. Phil Rudd doing yeoman's work here, man. It's hard to be in a band with Angus and Malcolm and Bon, right? You kind of get overshadowed. But Phil doing a fantastic job. Really good. Now we'll finish off the A-side with Problem Child. Problem Child, a little weird, right? You get the fake fade out, and then with 20 seconds, it almost sounds like the song's kicking back off again. But it's not a new song, guys. That's how it ends. But you talk about an instrumental tour de force right there, right? The guitar work was unbelievable. Phil on the drumming again. And this is an AC/DC song, man. I mean, Bond's bringing it on the lyrics on this one. He's telling you he's a problem child. Don't mess with him, right? He takes what he wants. If you mess with him, he's going to stab you, and then eventually he's going to shoot you. He's just going to get what he wants because he's a problem child. So steer clear of him, man. And I mean, I think a lot of us know people, maybe who weren't going to kill you, but you thought might. I mean, there's always these types of guys around. But, 3 of the 5 songs on this side I thought were really good. I mean, Love at First Feel was really good too. I just got a problem with the lyrics, but really strong A side. Now we kick off the B side with There's Gonna Be Some Rockin'. All right, there's gonna be some rockin'. Just talking, at their show, they're gonna rock it out, man. They're gonna bring it, right? So you better be ready. Bond sounded a little different, right? His voice sounded a little different, but then he kicked it. I mean, it sounded good, but at the start of it, then he kicked it in as it went on, and same guitar work, drumming. It's just a typical AC/DC song, right? What you want from them. I mean, the lyrics aren't super complicated. You're just going to have an anthemic chorus that you get to keep chanting over. Fantastic guitar work. So that one's good. We got 3 songs left. They're all really long songs. Got The Story of My Life. Ain't No Fun, and in parentheses, Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire. Ain't no fun waiting around to be a millionaire. Pretty good lyrics on here. He starts out with it's going to be wait. It's even before my time, but it starts out with a little dragnet thing where Bond's talking. The following is a true story. Only the names have been changed to protect the guilty. Dragnet was a popular show here in the United States in the 50s and maybe into the 60s. I don't know. But he's talking about, he's trying to make the rock and roll dream happen. So he's doing it. But like verse 3, I got holes in my shoes, holes in my teeth, holes in my socks. I can't get no sleep. I'm trying to make a million. Like he's out here roughing it, man. And about his jeans, having holes in his jeans. They used to be new. They used to be clean. And just out here doing. One of these days, you'll see me driving around town in my Rolls Royce with the sunroof down, my bottle of booze, no summertime blues, shouting out, Mom, look at me in my rock and roll voice. And then we get in that, no, ain't no fun, yeah, waiting around to be a millionaire. So a lot of chorus run in there, then obviously always a great solo in there. And then, hello, Howard. How you doing, my friend, my next door neighbor? Oh, yeah, get your effing jumbo jet out of my airport. He's probably talking about Howard Hughes at this point, I'm guessing. But, I mean, it could be anyone. But just another well-done AC/DC song with the signature sound. The guitar works fantastic. The drumming's fantastic. Bond sounds good. It's probably a little bit long. Could be a little less. But, it's a good song. All right, we got 2 tracks left. We got Right On. All right, that was the 3rd and final single from this album. I forgot to mention that at the start. That song is fantastic, right? It shows you the musicianship that is here. And I guess that's my frustration with, like the song Big Balls. I get, once again, I don't want to revisit that, but it's funny, this is what these guys can do, right? The Study Drumming beat by Phil Rudd just keeps everybody in there. And then the guitar works fantastic, right? It's not over the top. They're not going all in. They're great when they do that too, but it shows you what they can do here. You keep feeling like the song might amp up and break into that, but it doesn't, just restrain. And man, Bond sounded fantastic. That's the best I've seen him or heard him sound. But this song is just great. And basically just about being persistent, right? No matter what, he's going to just keep on going. He's going to ride on. He's going to make these mistakes with these girls and these things. And he knows he's not too young to die. Kind of like tough, right? When you know what did happen to him, and especially because this album came out afterwards in the U.S. But I mean, just really great stuff. Bluesy in there. Some bluesy stuff on High Voltage too, the other album that I reviewed. All right, let's close this thing out with Squealer. All right, Squealer. The last 15 seconds were silent, so I just cut it off there. So I didn't stop the song. Song was probably a little bit too long, right? So, I mean, of music, it was 5 minutes. Right On was almost a minute longer, the previous track, and that track was great. It's not about the length of the track. Just kind of got a little redundant, repetitive, but got redundant, repetitive with the Young Brothers, and especially Angus and his fantastic guitar. But I think the thing that stood out for me on here is the bass work by Mark Evans on the first half of the song. That's the most they've showcased him in that 2 albums that I've listened to, and I thought he sounded fantastic, right? And I mean, Bond gave a good performance, right? I mean, it's not a bad song. Probably good to end out with a rocker, right? We started out with the title track, which is just a great rocker, and we ended with that. So now we're going to get to my favorite tracks. There's only 9 songs on here. Honorable mention, Problem Child. Faves are going to be Rocker, and then 2 tremendous songs, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, the title track, and Ride On. So really good stuff there. Overall, this album is very, very solid. I think it's a little cut above High Voltage because I think Ride On and Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, you got 2 tremendous songs there. I already mentioned, I'm not going to beat it to death. There's some songs I just don't really care for. Either lyrically, they're questionable, right? Or they're just too campy for me. But I get it if you love it, man. I'm not judging. If you love the music, more power to you. But I gave High Voltage a 7.0. I'm going to give this a 7.5. But we got Let There Be Rock coming up next month. So stay tuned for that. Go check out High Voltage as well. Let me know what you think of this one. What are your favorite tracks? I know what some of you are going to say. I get it, man. So let me know your favorite tracks. Let me know your overall grade of this and where you think it stands in their canon. I'm just curious of the Bon Scott years. Leave me in the comments. What is your favorite album of the Bon Scott years as we're going to go through all of them, thanks to Carl. So thank you to Carl for bringing this one. Until next time, guys, I will see you